So, have you ever really stopped to wonder what the conflict between the United States and Iran is actually about? I mean, is it just about oil or nuclear weapons, or could it be something much, much deeper? Well, one source we've been digging into presents a pretty fascinating and, to be honest, a deeply unsettling answer.
To answer a question like that, this theory says we have to do something pretty radical first. We have to question the very fabric of our own reality. Now, I know, it sounds like a wild idea, but stick with me here, because it completely reframes this entire conflict in a startling new way. And here it is, the core idea, that our reality, the world we think we know, is a kind of shared illusion, a fantasy that we all, consciously or not, agree to believe in. To explain this, the theory uses a classic piece of philosophy you might have heard of, Plato's allegory of the cave. Okay, so imagine this. We're all prisoners, chained up inside a cave, and we can't turn our heads. The only thing we can see are shadows projected on the wall right in front of us. We start giving these shadows names. We make up stories about them, and we end up believing that this shadow world is the real world. We have no idea that behind us there are these unseen figures using puppets in front of a fire to create the very reality we're watching. This allegory, this is the key metaphor for understanding the global power structure, according to this analysis.
Right, so who are these figures casting the shadows on the wall? Well, this theory lays out a very clear hierarchy, a group it calls the architects of the game.
So here's how it's structured. At the very bottom, you have what the theory calls the American Empire, and it defines this mainly as a military force. Now, this force doesn't run the world directly. What it does is provide the security, the muscle that allows a global financial order to exist. These are the game masters, and they are the ones who build the game that all of us have to play, the global economy.
And how does this game work exactly? The number one tool, the main lever for pulling value out of the system and storing it, is the US dollar. Every single time it's used anywhere in the world, it basically acts like a tax on everyone. A pretty sweet deal that benefits the United States, which, of course, can print as much of it as it wants.
And this tiered system shows you exactly how that value gets siphoned up. See, down at the bottom, you've got the nations that produce raw materials. Think Russia and the Middle East. A step above them is manufacturing, which is mostly China. Then you have knowledge and tech. That's Europe and the Five Eyes nations, the intelligence alliance of the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And right at the very top, controlling the whole show, that's finance, and it's dominated by the United States. The whole structure is designed to funnel wealth straight to the top.
So, you might be asking, how do you get billions of people to buy into this, to believe this system is fair and just? This theory points to three huge indoctrination tools. First, education, which shapes how you see the world in universities. Second, the media, which constantly frames the system as a rules-based international order. And third, culture. Think Hollywood, which embeds these values so deeply into our stories that we don't even think to question them. It all works together to make you believe the shadows are real.
But here's where it gets even crazier. The theory says there's another system running in parallel to all of this, a hidden network that it calls a parasite, and it doesn't play by the same rules as the countries we see on the news.
Okay, so this is a really critical distinction the theory makes. You have the host, that's the visible system of countries playing the global economy game. The host creates value. But then you have the parasite. This is a transnational network that operates entirely in the shadows, and its only job, its only function, is to extract value from the host system. It doesn't build or create anything.
And according to this theory, it operates through three main functions. First, intelligence, which it uses to get inside other nations and co-opt their elites. Second, crime, which provides all sorts of illicit incentives, like drug money or money laundering, to keep those elites loyal. And finally, science, which this source claims is used not to find the truth, but to find evidence that justifies and protects the existing power structure.
Now, I know this all might sound really abstract and theoretical, but the source material gets very specific, and it actually names people like Jeffrey Epstein and Jared Kushner as alleged operators within this parasite system. It claims their networks are the bridges that connect the worlds of transnational finance, intelligence, and crime, which allows them to operate above and between the laws of any single nation.
But this entire complicated system, both the host and the parasite, has a critical weakness, a fatal flaw. And according to this theory, that flaw is the very reason we're seeing the conflict that's unfolding today.
And here it is, the whole illusion, the entire house of cards. It all depends on just one single perception, that the American empire is unbeatable. The moment that perception shatters, people might start to realize they're just staring at shadows on a wall. The whole thing could come crashing down. The theory uses a really powerful analogy to explain this. Think about a school bully. To stay in power, the bully has to, every once in a while, pick a fight and beat someone up for no good reason. It's just a way to remind everyone in the schoolyard who's in charge. The theory suggests that this is why America has been involved in so many wars, especially in the Middle East. And if you follow this line of thinking, you start to see a clear pattern. In 1953, the US and the UK overthrew Iran's elected government. In the 80s, the US backed Saddam Hussein against Iran. The 2003 invasion of Iraq was justified with intelligence that a leaked British memo famously said was being fixed around the policy. It's a long history of interventions designed to do one thing: project power and maintain control.
And that brings us right back to Iran. They seem to recognize they can't fight the empire's military head-on. So this analysis says they've developed a different kind of strategy, an asymmetric one. They don't target the bully's fists, they target the game itself, the global economy.
Yeah, this quote just sums it up perfectly. By threatening key economic choke points, like the shipping lanes in the Red Sea, for example, Iran creates enormous pressure on the entire global system. The goal isn't to win a traditional war. The goal is to find the weak point in the house of cards and just poke it until the whole thing starts to fall apart.
So, when you start putting all these pieces together, the shadow play, the game masters, this parasite network, this asymmetric strategy, you start to see what the real stakes are. And this really is the ultimate takeaway. According to this theory, what we're watching isn't just another regional conflict. It's a war for reality itself. It's a struggle between those who benefit from keeping the hallucination going and those who want to shatter it and create a new one.
Which leaves us with one final, kind of haunting question. A question that takes us right back to Plato's cave. If there's any truth to this theory, what happens when the prisoners finally break their chains, turn around, and realize for the first time that they've been staring at shadows their entire lives?